Okay, abusia ba makwaba shonko so edeba POG Media so abusia yembonra eye yensem enrada yedi kan ede bremo se Ken Ofori Atta eye kesi ejaben OSP declare no wanted nene yenda sorry ye no eye Interpol for red Interpol red alert what issued for eye Ken Ofori Atta. Now that means eye USA Interpol for no omo issue red alert on Ken Ofori Atta abusuan sisi an Ken Ofori Atta no US for Interpol for money a bread dending a omo issue red alert one. So now that means say red alert no ye issue was so a baby a we piano abusuan ye betwen ede waba Ghana hase ya abusuan enye asem keto akranti sisi ano Ken Ofori Atta baby a wono efie krampo no Max eneshe no obehuna jacket eneshe Ken Ofori Atta course okoko yi nanima nioma ebe capture ne ye yi no de na bagana hase no abusua enye asem keto akra Ken Ofori Atta ne criminality sa bone ene nioma bone bi a wadi a echese OSP ehia no na watoto na no Ken Ofori Atta de no ho akenwura na no ho na odi akenwura no so no USA Interpol for the red alert atono so mome yanko na yanko ti ensema ekoso medamase.
His name is hereby re-entered on the OSP's list of wanted persons. The OSP will take all necessary legal steps to secure Mr. Ofori Atta's return to the jurisdiction and to answer to the criminal inquiries against him. In pursuance of this, about 30 minutes before this briefing, I triggered processes for the issuance of an Interpol red notice for the location and provisional arrest of Mr. Kenneth Nanaya Ofori Atta in whichever jurisdiction pending extradition or his surrender. Around the same time, I dispatched a request for extradition processes to be instituted for the provisional apprehension in any jurisdiction in which Mr. Ofori Atta may be located or found, and his extradition to the Republic of Ghana. The OSP will prefer criminal charges in the courts against Mr. Ofori Atta in due course, whether in absentia or otherwise. The principle upon which we proceed is that no person, regardless of title, regardless of status, regardless of medical condition, is beyond the reach of inquiry by the OSP. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, I'll prepare to answer them. If you don't have any questions to Mikayepa and Kamiko.
As redeclared former finance minister Kenneth Ofori Atta a wanted person and a fugitive from justice. We'll tell you why. There's more on this and stay with us because earlier today, the special prosecutor, as was earlier advertised, addressed the press in a number of things. He touched on 4 issues. Well, we'll start off with the former finance minister. He's a wanted man again. That is after his failure to attend upon an invitation by the Office of the Special Prosecutor to answer questions in some 5 corruption-related matters. We'll show that to you. We'll recall those 5 corruption-related matters and put the issues in context tonight. The OSP is saying it is taking all actions to have the once powerful minister return to the jurisdiction. Here's the Special Prosecutor, Kisi Jabeng, addressing the press earlier today. Take a look.
The OSP redeclares that Mr. Ofori Atta is a wanted person and a fugitive from justice. His name is hereby re-entered on the OSP's list of wanted persons. The OSP will take all necessary legal steps to secure Mr. Ofori Atta's return to the jurisdiction and to answer to the criminal inquiries against him. In pursuance of this, about 30 minutes before this briefing, I triggered processes for the issuance of an Interpol red notice for the location and provisional arrest of Mr. Kenneth Nanaya Ofori Atta in whichever jurisdiction pending extradition or his surrender. Around the same time, I dispatched a request for extradition processes to be instituted for the provisional apprehension in any jurisdiction in which Mr. Ofori Atta may be located or found, and his extradition to the Republic of Ghana.
Now, let's stay a bit further with the Special Prosecutor because he explained how he arrived at this decision to redeclare Ken Ofori Atta as a wanted man and fugitive from justice, and then also the Interpol red alert that has been triggered just 30 minutes before that arrest that they addressed around 5 p.m. earlier today, as he indicated. Take a look.
from 20 to 21 March, when he said he was going to have the possible medical intervention, surgical intervention, upon which reckoning we indulgently said, oh, take some of the days, recuperate. So he suggested he will come between 14 to 30 May. We said, oh, take a few more days, come on 2nd June. How friendly can we be beyond this? After accommodating you, you sat by for at least 67 days when you knew your condition had changed, and you never bothered to tell the OSP that there's been a fundamental change in your condition. You're acting in bad faith, utter bad faith, and for which reason we have stopped this party.
Well, so that's a special prosecutor there. Today we got to know as well a bit more detail about the health condition of the former finance minister. According to the special prosecutor, he's been diagnosed with cancer. We'll get into the details of that shortly. But then again, also the special prosecutor, Kisi Jaben, explained why Ken Ofori is needed physically to present himself. He was supposed to do that as at 1:30 p.m. today. He didn't do it. A question was asked that his lawyers wrote to the special prosecutor indicating the readiness of Ken Ofori to avail himself virtually to engage in a virtual interview or interrogation by the special prosecutor's office. But the special prosecutor says, no, that's not for Ken Ofori to, as it were, suggest. So why is he needed physically and not that virtual option that his lawyers proposed in the said letter to the special prosecutor on the 28th of May? This is the special prosecutor's response to that. Take a look.
What will his presence do? Now, as I said, in due course, we'll charge him, whether in absentia or otherwise. Imagine we charge him in absentia and we get a conviction against him. Who are we imprisoning or who are we fining? Sir, to get a simple mathematics of it. As I said in my brief, a suspect in a criminal matter does not choose how the investigative authority should go about investigating him. When he wants to appear, when he decides to appear, in what way he wants to appear. We do not take caution statements online from a foreign jurisdiction. And who says, I even want to take a caution statement from him? He is the one who is dictating, he wants to dictate the process. You get it? And we have always insisted from the onset that we want him here. Legally, I will say that to you. But there's a far more grave reason why we need him here. And since the investigation is still going on, it will be rounded up soon. I will not be able to disclose to you. But as I said, that possibility, if we take him to court, if he is convicted, if he is sentenced to some number of days, months, years in prison, in absentia, what would we have done if we didn't to bring him here? Mind you, this office investigated a former president. The former president was served at the time with the same kind of directive to appear before the OSP. We didn't have to be chasing the former president around the world. How much less a former minister of finance? What is so special about Mr. Ofori that he thinks is unique and should be treated like a king?
So the special prosecutor, Kisi Jaben, tough talking today and clearly indicating what he intends to do going forward. But then again, let's go back a bit, backtrack and recall the issues and chronicle the specific dates that the special prosecutor himself did indicate during the press conference today. Dennis Baberi Wadam Esquire is with me. We've been following this case quite closely. Dennis, good to have you as always.
Good to have you back.
Indeed, it's good to be back. As always. Well, let's recall this, right?
Well, you just came in big. I mean, big news coming in at the time.
Indeed.
Are you able to catch up? Or I should take you along?
A lot has been happening.
A lot has been happening. Too much.
Too much.
Let me take you along.
Indeed.
But even before we get into the timelines and all that, let's understand what exactly or why exactly the Office of the Special Prosecutor needs the former finance minister. He says there are specific allegations that he wants the former finance minister to respond to, and these are matters that relate to petroleum and mineral revenue assurance. This has to do with the SML deal, which had become very controversial. He says he wants the former finance minister to respond to matters in relation to that. There's also an issue of the Electricity Company of Ghana contract termination. This is also another matter for which the OSP is on the heels of the former finance minister. And then the big one, the National Cathedral project, a very controversial project, one that has been captured under the NDC manifesto. Even before this whole pursuit of the OSP came into the picture, there's also been conversation that there's going to be a re-audit, there's going to be an investigation into the project. So the finance minister is wanted to answer to questions in relation to that particular project. There's also a matter of the ambulance procurement. Now recall that when the MPP came into government, they procured some ambulances for almost all districts in the country. Now that has also become an issue for which the OSP wants to look into some matters of how they were procured and how some contracts were awarded for their servicing and the like. So that is also a matter that the former finance minister is needed to answer. There's also a matter that has to do with GRA tax, P-fund management, also another big issue that the OSP wants the former finance minister to answer to. So 5 key things for which the former finance minister is wanted, and OSP says that he wants him in person to answer in respect of this. You heard me explain why it is important for him to appear in person, and the reason for which he declined that request by lawyers of the OSP to have a virtual conference so that he could take his caution statement and all that.
Absolutely.
We'll go into that a bit more, but let's begin to understand where this whole engagement started and how we actually got to where we are today, because it didn't just start today. Knowing that he was the finance minister, and even though he was going out of office, on January 2, this by then, the Akuffo government had lost power. They were almost on their way out. But there were still those who were managing the affairs of the country. Then finance minister wrote to the former chief of staff, Ms. Akuffo Ofori, to seek medical attention abroad. I mean, that is standard practice for government officials at the time who wanted to leave the shores of the country. Now, fast forward to January 2022, there had been a change in government, but all the same, the finance minister thought it necessary to write to the current chief of staff, Julius Zebra, also informing him of his absence. The reason for this information was to the effect that, yes, he had held key position in government, and if it became necessary that he be needed for anything, he could be contacted. He gave details, and that was a letter that he had written.
Right.
Also in the same month, 24th of January 2025, now special prosecutor writes to Ken Ofori asking him to attend an interview on February 10. And that was supposed to be held at the OSP's office, and that he was a suspect in respect of 4 corruption and corruption-related offenses. At the time, there were 4. Now we are learning there are 5. Fast forward, January 31, 2025, Ken Ofori's lawyers wrote to the OSP about his absence because, obviously, like I mentioned to you, he had written earlier to say that he was leaving the shores of the country. So the lawyers informed OSP about his absence, and then that his lawyers, were available to assist with whatever information that the OSP may require in respect of those corruption and corruption-related issues that had been raised. 5th February 2025, now OSP insisted that Ken Ofori's lawyers should indicate by close of 10th February, the day he had requested for the meeting, when he will be available in person for that interview, because it didn't seem like the OSP was enthused about engaging the lawyers. He wanted Ken Ofori himself.
Exactly.
And that failure of which the OSP would take the steps to secure his return to the country. So even as far back as February 10, the OSP was giving signals that he wanted Ken himself in the country, and he wanted to have the interview with him, not with the lawyers, in person. Now, February 7, 2 days after, lawyers of Ken Ofori wrote again to the OSP suggesting a possible in-person interview after March. And at this point, they were explaining to the OSP that he was due for some medical procedures which were going to happen in March. So he was only going to be available after March. This was when they proposed March 20, March 21 as the date for the surgery. The OSP will start to do some calculations, and he will refer to a certain March. 20 and 21. This is what he's talking about.
I see. That there's 67 days afterwards and so on.
Exactly. That's when it became clear to him that this March 2021 surgery was not going to be possible. He should have communicated early enough rather than wait to communicate just a few days ago about his unavailability. Now, February 11, 2025, that was when we got news that Ken Ofori-Atta's house was raided by people who were suspected to be operatives of the national security. Indeed, that was confirmed by the majority leader on the floor of Parliament, even apologizing on behalf of the national security. That indeed happened. So when that happened, the lawyers of Ken Ofori-Atta wrote to ask the special prosecutor if that raid was at his instance. That is to say, if he was the one who sanctioned it. Just before they could get an answer, there was that press conference by the OSP in which the former finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, was declared a wanted person and a fugitive from justice. On the 18th of February 2025, Ken Ofori-Atta's lawyers wrote to the OSP to clarify and reschedule interview with the OSP, and also demanded that Ken Ofori-Atta be taken off the wanted list. At this point, there had also been some legal matters that were coming up. So the OSP, this would see in a subsequent release how they had reached the agreement for him to be taken off the wanted list, and also to have a day that he would appear before the OSP for that interview. So on February 18, 2025, the OSP in a press statement announced that Ken Ofori-Atta had been removed from the wanted list and that he was no longer a fugitive from justice. And this was when, even though the lawyers had asked for a time after March 20 and 2021, the OSP, as he would later explain, graciously gave a June 2, which is today, for that particular meeting at his office at 2 p.m.
So this June 2 date, which is today, was given as far back as February 8.
Yes. So at this point, that reached that agreement. Now, on March 3, Ken Ofori-Atta's lawyers wrote to the OSP to draw his attention to the fact that even though they had agreed to take his name off the wanted list, there were still some traces posted on their website and their social media handles. So they wanted that to be taken off. They would also take legal action to press home that demand and also seek to injunct the OSP from proceeding on that matter. That is still a matter which is pending before the law courts. But however, before the whole thing came to an end, now to firm up this agreement, this was a statement from the OSP where the OSP had indicated how they have reached an agreement and how the former finance minister's name was taken off the wanted list and what was required of him moving forward. And just for purposes of emphasis, let me take it from this part. Where they said Mr. Ofori-Atta is mandatorily required to appear in person before the OSP on 2nd June 2025. If Mr. Ofori-Atta fails to attend the OSP on the scheduled dates, he shall be re-entered onto the OSP's list of wanted persons, and the OSP shall consider him a fugitive from justice. It continues to say that whereupon the OSP will cause the issuance of an Interpol red notice in his regard, and also cause the initiation of extradition proceedings in any jurisdiction in which he may be found. It ends by saying that the OSP remains, that's a way of ending the letter. This was dated 17th of March 2025. So what's important here is that when you see the list of all these things that the OSP threatened or warned to do, if the former finance minister fails to show up today, are the exact things that he announced today as having been reactivated or redeclared. So for those who have been following the matter, this is not really news, because these were things that the OSP said he was going to do should Ken Ofori-Atta fail to show. Now he tells us that lawyers have written to him on May 28th to indicate that he's not going to be available because he's been diagnosed of cancer. That appears not to be convincing to the OSP, and that explains the reason for which we are where we are now.
I see, but there was a Facebook post by the special prosecutor on the 28th of May indicating that the Human Rights Court had adjourned to 18th June for a ruling on the said motion, the one you referred to, by the former finance minister seeking to restrain him, the special prosecutor, from declaring Ken Ofori-Atta wanted, amongst other reliefs. That particular judgment is on June 18. But then again, the special prosecutor has gone ahead to declare him as a wanted man.
Yes, because
that's just to put it on record.
Yes, so that's what he clearly indicated. And even when he was addressing the press, he in parts even mentioned about the pendency of that particular application, and then the processes and how the ruling is going to be on a subsequent date. However, as long as he has still not been restrained, I think he feels that he has every right to continue to do whatever it is that he's doing. In any case, that was in respect of some specific matters that were raised against the OSP then. I don't know if those set of facts still will apply to what is happening now.
now.
That's a different conversation. But it's important to put on record that matter has still not been determined. It will be determined on June 18. But the OSP has done what he says is the most appropriate thing to do now. He thinks that the former finance minister has acted in bad faith. He thinks that it is his approach to the law, to the office of the OSP, is one that cannot be countenanced. For the reason for which he took the decision that he took.
And then stay with me. I want you to pull up the wanted notice that the special prosecutor posted on his website just few minutes after that press conference, a few minutes before the press conference. This wanted notice of Kenneth Ofori was put on the OSP's website. We'll show that to you. But Martin Pebo is privately.
So, USA Interpol and I issue red alert on Ken Ofori Abusia and Asam Keto Akra Honsem and the Bremen. But I'm a system of Japan, Cocotiza, Oduno, at the MI, POG Media. So, Madame.